Our next guest has an article with a very catchy title, The Disgraceful Gitmo Exodus. It details how President Obama, the author says, misled the American public in the attempt to shut down Gitmo, and he's put American lives in danger. The Weekly Standard's Steve Hayes wrote that article, and he's with us this morning. Make your case, Steve. Go.
Morning, Stuart. Yeah, just to start with the president and misleading the American public, that's really not disputable. What the president said in an interview at the beginning of this year was that he was releasing low-level individuals and that only a handful had returned to the fight. Well, his own director of national intelligence put that number at much closer to 200 former Guantanamo detainees who had returned to the fight. And of course, we know that even the Taliban 5 were senior Taliban officials. There are many other high-level al-Qaeda operatives who the president has either released or transferred. He knows this. So when he says in an interview that he's releasing or transferring low-level individuals and he's only had a handful who returned to the fight, we know that that's categorically false.
Why is he doing it? I mean, there's enormous opposition to him doing this. We know that they're going back onto the battlefield to kill Americans. We know this. So why is he so committed to doing it no matter what?
Well, remember, closing Guantanamo was a key part of President Obama's case for election in 2008. This was the argument he made. We're going to take the United States on a different path. George W. Bush has done this. We're going to reverse most of George W. Bush's counterterrorism policies, and we are going to close Guantanamo. He comes into office, and on his second day in office, he issues an executive order mandating that Guantanamo be closed within a year. I think he faced some reality. He had some people who told him, look, Mr. President, that's not really feasible. But what he's doing now is he's taking these terrorists who remain there, who are really the worst of the worst. I mean, people who could have been released without maybe causing us much danger, they were released 10 years ago. The people who remain in Guantanamo today are there for a reason, and the President of the United States and his administration is rewriting the threat assessments that were provided by the military and intelligence professionals about these detainees in order to release them.
Now, that's going to be part of his legacy. I've been very harsh, maybe too harsh, about his legacy. I'm saying that his foreign policy is largely a failure. His policy on terror has not been wildly successful, and his policy on the domestic economy shows the worst recovery from recession since World War II. Am I a little too harsh in my... You're smiling. I mean, look,
I don't think so.
I don't want to be real harsh about the President of the United States of America as he comes to the end of his term. Am I being too harsh?
No, but it's important to tell people exactly what happened, and I would say that in your assessment of his terrorism policies, you were far too generous. It hasn't been that they haven't been successful. They've been a total disaster. I mean, look at what the president said in 2012 when he was running for re-election. Al-Qaeda's on the run, Al-Qaeda's decimated, basically suggesting the jihadist threat was over. We now know that ISIS has grown exponentially. They've amassed territory around the world, and this has been far, far from a success. It's been a complete failure.
Okay, plenty of material for Donald Trump on the Monday night debate, I suspect.
No question.
We will, of course, be watching you, Steve Hayes, on Special Report.